Hi folks, welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be painting Jack Black, aka Jablinski, using the Winsor & Newton gold ink, and I'm going to be painting on the Strathmore black drawing paper. For this portrait I'm also going to be using a dip pen as well as an inexpensive angled paintbrush, but I'll put details of all the art supplies in the description box if you want to go and check them out. Now, if you've seen other videos on this channel, you'll know that I've used dip pens and ink before, but I've never painted with gold ink, and I'm pretty new to drawing on black paper too. So before I started Jack Black's portrait, I wanted to do a quick test on this paper to see how the gold ink laid down and worked with both the dip pen and the paintbrush. And the thing that I noticed straight away with the ink was that it needed a good shake before I started, as at rest it separates out into layers. Shake this little bottle up though and wow, the ink almost comes alive. It's so satisfying to watch. The ink seemed to work really well with the dip pen, which I thought would be useful to get finer details in the portrait, and I thought the angled paintbrush would be good for covering larger areas while still maintaining an element of control for smaller areas as well. So I was excited to get started, and as much as this portrait was going to be somewhat experimental and different to anything I've done on this channel before, pushing myself out of my comfort zone and trying new things is something that I mentioned wanting to do in my plans for 2019 video last week, which I'll link in the card above, and I thought it would be a fun way to start the year. And if you're wondering why I chose to draw Jack Black, well, as well as being in The Holiday, which is one of my favourite films, my son told me recently that Jack Black has just set up a gaming channel here on YouTube. A suggestion from his son, I gather, and he's reached 1 million subscribers in a week, which has fast-tracked him to getting a gold play button award from YouTube. I wanted to do a portrait in gold ink, so I put two and two together and came up with the idea of drawing Jack Black on black paper with gold ink. If you like this video, by the way, please give it a thumbs up, comment and consider subscribing to my channel and hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as I upload a new video. From this week I am also going to be doing a second weekly video on a Friday, which will be a draw with me style of video in real time, but more about that later on and what you'll need if you want to draw along with me. So with my sparkly gold washi tape applied around the outside of my paper to provide a clean edge for Jack Black's golden portrait, and having drawn a very faint pencil sketch to guide me, I was all set to go. Not forgetting of course to give the ink a really good shake before I started. Now if I was drawing this portrait on white paper with black ink, the whole process would be a bit more straightforward. I'd paint in black pupils for the eyes and use my black ink to paint Jack's glasses, for example. But with black paper I had to do the reverse. I had to leave the black areas free of ink and instead paint the light areas with gold, and this negative painting technique can take a bit of getting used to. I did use a reference picture which I converted from colour to black and white to help simplify the process, but at the start I found that I was constantly reminding myself to paint the white areas and leave the black. So to start with, using my dip pen, I focused on Jack's eyes and just for fun decided to make the highlights in his eyes little gold play buttons. After this, I switched over to my angled paintbrush to fill in the areas around the eyes and glasses, and as much as this started out pretty well, it wasn't long before I noticed the intensity of the gold ink was getting less as the mixture began to separate out again, and I needed to give it another good shake. So Winsor & Newton described this gold ink as bronze suspended in a gum solution, so I'm guessing that maybe the weight of these bronze particles might account for its tendency to separate out, but I wasn't really expecting to have to recap and shake the bottle quite so many times throughout the painting. Mind you, this is an A4 size piece of paper, which is quite a large area to cover in gold, so maybe this would be less of a problem or issue if you were doing a smaller artwork or using the gold ink for, say, calligraphy, or just to add some nice subtle sparkly touches at the end of a finished painting or drawing. However, being that I'd only discovered this once I'd started the painting, I had to see it through to the end, and despite having to regularly keep reshaking the ink, I still found myself fascinated by the way it moved and swirled around constantly, both in the bottle and on the paper. It was also really fun to take a step back now and then to see Jack Black's face emerging, as I did need to concentrate quite hard on using this negative painting technique. Negative painting, by the way, for those of you who aren't quite sure, is when you establish the object of the drawing, in this case Jack Black, by painting around it rather than painting it directly in the more traditional way. So after completing the eyes and forehead, I started on the hair, and at this point began to notice that as the ink was drying, the overall coverage was a bit inconsistent, though this was more noticeable on the larger areas, and although I could have added further layers of ink to try and even this up, I figured it added a bit of interest to the portrait. There was also the paper to consider. Being a £60 drawing paper, this was not a mixed media paper, so I wasn't sure how it would hold up to multiple layers of ink. I did use the ink neat straight from the bottle without diluting it as suggested by the manufacturers, but it's still a liquid, and being that the paper had started to curl up at the top right hand corner of the painting where the application of ink was quite heavy, I decided to stick with just the one layer all over. I am left wondering though whether it might be worth experimenting with this gold ink on different paper types. It does dry very quickly on this black medium surface paper, but would the end result be much different on, say, cold press watercolour paper? I don't know, but if you've got any experience in working with gold ink, let me know in the comments which paper you used, or if you have any tips or techniques you've learned that might help, then please drop them in the comments as well. Generally though, I think the coverage of ink was best in areas where I wasn't concentrating on detail, so maybe with practice I'll get better. Back to the painting then, and at this point, with the outline shape of Jack's hair in place as well as his nose, it was time to move on to the lower part of his face. If you haven't seen Jack Black recently, he currently has longer hair, a moustache and a beard, but his characteristic smile and mouth shape are still the same as always. So I was really hoping to capture that as well as some of his big personality in my portrait. If you want to see whether my drawing looks like Jack Black, why not go and check out his channel too and subscribe whilst you're there. By this point of the painting, I was at last starting to feel more confident with the techniques I was using and how the ink itself behaved on the black paper, so I went back to my dip pen to add in some finer lines to the moustache and beard area. Overall, I wasn't too sure about the inconsistent, often blotchy appearance of the gold ink, and it was pretty frustrating having to keep shaking the bottle to remix it and maintain the beautiful bright gold colour that was achievable. But working with this lively, swirly ink was really fascinating and almost therapeutic. So even though the finished portrait may not be as accurate or polished as I'd hoped for, I did really enjoy the process. It was a challenge, but it was a fun challenge and something a bit different to my usual animal portraits in coloured ink or watercolour. It was nice to try something new, and sometimes by moving out of your comfort zone where it's safe, you can learn new things and grow more as an artist, which is always a good thing. The overall effect is certainly bright and lively, and I don't think it turned out badly for its first attempt. There is also the advantage too that if you do make a mistake or change your mind, that you can add black coloured pencil over the top of the dried ink quite effectively, and I did use this method just to tidy up the reflections in Jack's eyes before I called this painting of Jack Black finished. Before I go though, I did want to mention a few things. Firstly, I am going to be doing a second video on this channel as of this week, which will be going out on Friday, and this is going to be a real-time sketch with me video, as I mentioned earlier. It's not going to be live, but if you want to draw along to the video, you'll need a piece of toned paper, either tan or grey, a black and white coloured pencil or charcoal, and a kneaded or regular eraser. I'm going to be talking you through how I use value and contrast to create a drawing of a realistic human eye. Don't forget as well that Friday the 11th of January is also the closing date for the 500 subscribers giveaway video, so there's still time to enter if you want to be in with a chance to win. I'll put a link in the card above for the video which explains all about it. Lastly, I wanted to thank you all for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing and hit the bell icon as well to be notified as soon as I upload a new video. And if your name's Jack Black and you would like to own this golden masterpiece, then please get in touch. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.